Paul Wells, live from Edinburgh. Paul, thank you for joining us here on Breakfast Television. If you can give us an idea of what the mood and the scene is like there in Edinburgh.
So it's a typically cool, foggy day, and this morning when I went out for the first time, it was just dead quiet. People got jobs to get to, and basically all the arguing is over. Now there's nothing to do with vote. I was just out again for a little while, and the mood seems to me more cheerful than it's been in a while. You know, all during a campaign, voters feel helpless. They just got to sit and listen to all the politicians arguing back and forth. On a day like today, I think voters have a real sense that it's in their hands now, and that they finally get a chance to have their say.
And Paul, this is a major political milestone as Scotland potentially votes for independence from the United Kingdom. What is it? What are the key factors that got us to this point altogether?
Well, there's been a movement towards devolution for 30 years in the United Kingdom. The idea that you can't run everything out of Westminster, and so the Scottish Parliament itself came into operation, about 14 years ago, and what they've discovered is the more they move down this path of decentralization, the less satisfied some people in Scotland are. And so finally, David Cameron, the then new British Prime Minister, Tory Prime Minister, said, let's get this over and done. Let's settle this with a real referendum on the real choice, which is, are you in or are you out? He thought it would kind of be cathartic. He thought that it would allow people to hash it out and decide they loved Great Britain enough, and that would be the end of that. But for a while here, it has seemed to be going in the opposite direction. The gap between the no and the yes narrowed considerably, and there was one poll 10 days ago that showed the yes ahead, and that was the poll that put me on the next plane to Edinburgh.
Right. Fascinating that 97% of residents have registered to vote in this referendum. It sounds so familiar to us in Canada, obviously, with the referendums in Quebec in '95 and back in 1980, if we can remember that far back. Will a yes vote in Scotland now see them removed immediately from the UK?
No, there's, tomorrow, even if it's 52, 53% yes, tomorrow Scotland is still part of the UK. There's a formal set of negotiations that is established in the referendum law, and there'd be about an 18-month period during which they discuss all the details, all the transfer of powers and when British laws stop having effect here and all that. So, it's all quite genteel, and there'd be no rushing into anything, even if it is a yes vote.
And Paul, what would this mean for the United Kingdom should the majority in Scotland vote for independence here?
Well, it starts to throw open the question of what do you do if you're Wales, and what do you do if you're Northern Ireland? And there are independence movements. Certainly there's a fairly strong independence movement in Wales. And even if they sort of do administrative rearrangements to make way for Scotland leaving, the kind of elephant in the room is, what do you do if you're England? If Scotland gets to do what it wants and gets to ignore the United Kingdom, what about England, which is nearly 50 million of the 55 million people in the United Kingdom? And there's more and more people calling for English autonomy, for an autonomous English parliament. And if there's an English parliament, what's the UK Parliament left to do? I mean, England is, it's not like Ontario or Quebec that are, 25 or 30% of the population of Canada. England is more than 80% of the population of the UK. And so the short answer is, if Scotland votes yes tonight, they'll open up a huge kettle of worms for the entire rest of the UK.
Now, one more question here, Paul. In terms of the Union Jack, the flag, the blue representing Scotland, will it just become red?
The newspapers have been full of potential designs for a changed Union Jack. But because the Union Jack simply kind of evolved, there was no committee that decided what it would look like in the first place. It's not clear what the process would be. There's a school of thought that says you don't have to change the Union Jack because it doesn't represent the union of four countries. It represents the union of four crowns, the four royal families under one. And the head of the Independence Party here has said that Queen Elizabeth would continue to be the Queen of Scotland, so the Union Jack maybe doesn't have to be touched at all.
Well, it will be an historic vote. Paul Wells, political editor for Macleans magazine, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Of course, we'll follow this and hopefully maybe check in tomorrow morning with the end result.